Hola, Aleda.
Hola, Peter.
Okay, so what we're doing today is we're doing a third session on corruption. What have we done? Well, first of all I did some talks on the radio and on video about the business of the $10 million payment to the Saudi Arabian businessman, and made the point that I thought this was outrageous and so forth. Now, the situation there, just taking it back, was that the government was trying to do a deal with Saudi Arabia, or interest in that country, and the deal didn't go through, but a payment of $10 million was made to an individual. It transpired that this was regarded as a facilitation payment, and also that it was regarded as a small facilitation payment. And I did a little bit of research on my own and just decided from what I could see that this wasn't on, and it was a terrible type of a thing. The next thing was good, actually, and that was an article by Lisa Marriott, and I just hold up my papers here just for a second to congratulate the Dominion Post on running these articles by some associate professors, whatever, at Victoria University, Lisa Marriott being the first. Now then, Lisa's article was good because it drew people's attention to the 2007 Income Tax Act and the idea that small payments could be used under our law for expediting and ensuring a business being done, the difficulty being that these were to be small. And the difficulty, obviously, with that is that this was a $10 million payment, so we're not talking about a small situation. We're talking about something which is quite bad, in my view, quite way beyond what it was supposed to do. Okay, so I congratulated the Post and Professor Marriott on that as I went about my videos and radio work. And then there's been recently another article coming from Michael Macaulay, Associate Professor Victoria in Governance and Policy Studies, taking up the same topic from a slightly different angle. His angle is that the United Nations has now got a policy which is to do with the corruption in the world that people are meant to follow, or that advising governments to endorse. And this UN CAC, Convention Against Corruption, is very good, I think. I mean, I think it's very important. So his angle is coming in on that, and also looking at the legislation on the books here, a bill for against organised crime and anti-corruption legislation. So that's going through the Parliament, we hope, and the issue is whether it's strong enough and what that bill has to do with the income tax legislation of 2007. Okay, so that's the general context, and congratulations one and all for bringing these things up. But what I think we've got to look at too is the point that is followed up on in both of the articles, to give them credit, and I'd made the point originally, that the crime here is being committed in another country. Now, first of all, let's look at the word crime. That one of the things that the United Nations is calling for is for governments to recognise that bribery is a crime. That sounds logical to me, but it is not necessarily the case, particularly when you get into things like the New Zealand Income Tax Act of 2007, which says that small payments can be made to ensure and expedite business. I mean, this is obviously open, leaves things open. So we now come to that idea of crime being committed overseas, and we look at what is happening with respect to bribery and corruption overseas. And I've titled this little excerpt, this little video right now, Tigers, Flies and Kiwis. because the Chinese government has a policy now set out in 2012, an anti-corruption policy, which is taken very seriously and is causing a lot of issues in China, and it's been major shake-ups. And the idea there is that the tigers, that is the big people, and the flies, that is the little people, will all be affected. And so it won't be an anti-corruption purge which just goes after the small fry. The idea is that big operators, important people, people with power in the Communist Party or in business or wherever, will be targeted, and that seems to have been the case. Now then, the same thing applies in Nigeria, where people often point to Nigeria in terms of this sort of thing. But the fact is that Mahudri is actually, that their new leader is really trying to crack down on corruption. And as we go forward, particularly with trade deals and so forth, it's very important that we in New Zealand are seen to be in keeping with our clean, green, and in some respects beyond ethical reproach position on things, in a good space. If we want to be involved, for example, in the United Nations committees, one committee or another, it's very important to me anyway, that we have a strong anti-corruption approach. And I've been copying these videos to Mana ki Manawa too, because I believe that this is a mana issue. I think very strongly this is actually something that reflects on our mana here in Aotearoa. You're with Peter Cleve.